Well, hello there. Happy Sunday. Oh, what a treat it is to be here. There is something so special about being with people who are gathered in higher awareness and committed to that. You know, there's just something magical about that. There's a power, there's a permission granted for magnificence, and I feel it, and I'm just amazingly humbled to be here. So would it be okay if we had some breakthroughs and had a good time in the process? Yeah. Okay, good, because that does seem to be kind of the theme of things in this church. I love how you love to have fun. So I want to share something with you that's very dear to my heart. When I was in Bangkok, I had an amazing experience. I was doing a leadership training, and when I came back to being the tourist, I had the privilege of coming into a temple that was about the size of this room, you know, just kind of seeing what was in Bangkok. And off on one side was this giant statue of Buddha, and next to it was this glass case with these chunks of clay in it, and I thought that was interesting. So I went up and I read this little note about this story. It turns out that back in the 1950s, the Thai government was building this freeway to Bangkok. And in building this freeway, they actually had to physically relocate this ancient Buddhist temple. So they brought in all the heavy equipment. They lifted this giant statue of Buddha up, and the clay statue started to crack, and so they set it down. And that night, the head monk went out with a flashlight, shined it on the crack, and to his amazement, something from inside the statue shined back. Well, curiosity got the better of this guy. He took a chisel and a hammer, started hammering on this thing, and after a couple of hours, he stood in front of a 10.5-foot tall, 4.5-ton solid gold statue of Buddha. It is the biggest single piece of gold on the planet. Well, of course, they researched this. They discovered that 300 years earlier, the Burmese army was coming south, attacking what was then called Siam. The Siamese monks knew this, so of course they covered up their precious gold statue with clay. And when the army came through, the good news, they didn't take the statue. Bad news, they did take anybody who knew the secret. So for 300 years, people are walking around doing their daily activities, not knowing that this far beneath the surface was solid gold. And when I heard that story, it moved me. Because isn't that true about us as human beings? You know, the person to your left, tell you what, just for the heck of it, we're ready to have some fun here, right? Okay, just for the heck of it, would you turn to the person to the left and the right and look them in the eye and just give them a good morning? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. So here's my question. The person to the left and right, are they precious? Are they sacred? And the person between the person on your left and right, is that person precious? Is that person sacred? Who you are is off the charts in your preciousness. The English language can't come close to describing, to accurately reflecting the magnificence of who you are as a human being. But we live in a culture that covers that light up with clay. I love the reading that you shared, Maura. It's so true. And so my heart and the heart of many people in this room is to share the possibility of having the clay come down. And it's not so much that I or any other leader can give you your magnificence. That's ridiculous. But what we can do is interact with you where you can get it back. Does that make sense? I can't give you your magnificence. Why is that? Yeah, you already got it. It's already there. So the best we can do is reveal it. And what that clay is fear, guilt, resentment, hurt from the past, self-judgment, false beliefs. It comes by many names. And so today I want to talk about just one piece of that clay. And we call this embracing the tiger because it takes a certain amount of courage to go where we're going to go. But I know that we have a courageous bunch here. Okay. What I want to talk about is the nature and the mechanics of this thing called self-judgment. What does it cost us when we are beating the heck out of ourselves? What does that do to the area of self-esteem? So let me ask you a question. By a show of hands, for how many of you does it absolutely make your day when you've had the privilege of making a difference in somebody else's life? See, you want to just look around. It's like everybody's hand is up. Well, when your self-esteem is compromised, what happens to your ability to express that gift in the world? What happens to your joy? What happens to your effectiveness? What happens to your prosperity? So this thing called self-esteem isn't just a feel-good deal, although that would be motivation enough. This thing called self-esteem is on a one-to-one relationship with your effectiveness. When your self-esteem is down here, what's your effectiveness like? It's down here too. Self-esteem up here, your effectiveness is up here. So we want to really dismantle this thing called self-judgment, this chainsaw to self-esteem. Are you willing?
Yes.
Okay, good. Imagine, what would it be like if self-judgment and self-doubt did not get to live in your yard? Do you know? If it didn't have permission to take up residency in your heart, what could you do? What difference could you make? So that's where we're going. So I want to share with you this notion of something that we call core issues. What core issues are deep, fundamental judgments, harsh, critical, mean judgments that we made against self at a time of a hurt, typically growing up. You can't grow up in this culture and not get hurt. It's going to happen. That person that you said good morning to the left and to the right, here's something I know about them. Every single person in this room has been hurt, and I mean punched in the stomach by your best friend kind of hurt. We've all experienced that. Now, let's add another piece here. Little kids are egocentric. To little kids, who's God? Yeah, mom and dad. You know, they're big, they're all powerful, they're all knowing. Yeah. Joe goes, well, maybe not, but okay. But really, to a little kid, mom and dad are God. Now, they don't know that mom and dad are human. John Bradshaw coined the term multi-generational dysfunctionality, which basically means that the dysfunction of parents is modeled from generation to generation to generation to generation, right? So little kids, when they get hurt, when alcoholism is taking its toll, when they're being ignored, when they're being told, when they're being shamed, little kids do not go, oh, this is just a classical case of multi-generational dysfunctionality, I shouldn't take it personally. That's what they don't do, right? When dad's frustration is projected on the child, when mom's not there, when you get one of those looks, or worse, when there is abuse of whatever nature, what little kids do, because they're egocentric, they take it in. They don't know not to. So if something wonderful happens, it's because of me. If something terrible happens, it's because of me. And they take on this judgment against self, and they don't know not to. A core issue sounds, it is an insult to self. Now, are any core issues true? No, they're not. They're not. No judgment is true. If you take a look, and I'm talking about harsh, critical, mean kind of judgment, not discernment. Okay. No judgment exists in the physical universe. You know, here's a podium. You know, there's a chair, there's a microphone, there's some water. Show me a not good enough. You see? Not good enough, stupid, ugly, not worth loving, don't matter. None of those exist in the physical universe, do they? All core issues only exist by human point of view. You take all the humans off the planet, there's no judgment on the planet. Does that make sense? So there's no judgment is true, but as students of how the mind and the heart operate, if you have a false belief and it is imbued with tremendous negative emotion, can it be powerful even though it's ultimately not accurate? Yes, it can. It can. That's the power of the mind. That's faith in reverse, right? So what a core issue is this creation, this decision against self anchored with tremendous hurt. And then it becomes one's truth. It molds a person's identity. And of course, nobody teaches us this stuff in 4th grade. So we grow up into these adult bodies, but we still have this going on. See, how many of you believe, by a show of hands, that what we create on the outside begins with what's going on the inside? Who believes that? Yeah. Now, where do we put our educational focus? On the outside stuff or on the inside stuff? It's almost all on the outside stuff, and of course we need that. But, I mean, what a contrast here, what we can do with our, with these things. You know, I used to know kind of how a phone operated. I have no idea how, to me it's organic. You know, I have no idea how this operates. What we can do technologically, off the charts. But just try keeping a family together. Try maintaining self-esteem for a few days in a row. There's a gap there between where we are technologically and where we are in our heart. So, this thing called core issue is one of the biggest breakthroughs in the area of growing in our inner wisdom. So, like I said, a core issue sounds like I'm no good, I'm stupid, I'm not worth loving, I don't matter, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, I don't have what it takes, I'm not good enough. It's something along that line that in the big picture is not true at all, and yet we buy it and we don't know not to. Okay. Now, question. How do you know if you have any core issues? Well, the easy answer is if you're breathing. But maybe even a better answer is this. You know you have a core issue if you ever get upset about anything. Because anytime you're upset, where does upset live? Does it live out there or does it live in here? It lives in here. And it wouldn't live in here if there wasn't something in here getting upset. Does that make sense? So, of course, our culture teaches that, he upset me, and that circumstance upset me. And we put the focus out there, giving away all our power to grow to the circumstances. What we want to do is take that power back. All right. So, a couple of dynamics about core issue that you need to know. Number one is that in our culture, if something's painful, do we embrace it or we do anything in the world to get away from it? You see what I'm saying? If there's a pain in here, what we're taught is to not experience it and get out of Dodge fast. The problem is what you resist persists. So if you've got a hurt here and you're fighting it and resisting it and you're running away from it, you're giving the hurt power. Well, here's the courage part of this work. This is the embracing the tiger part. What we've found creates the breakthrough is making a 180-degree shift and going towards it rather than away from it. That's called chasing the bully. As long as you run from the bully's going to chase you, right? But when you stand your ground, what's the bully do? Goes, oh, I was just kidding, right? So we do this 180-degree shift, and What happens is a miracle. So, in order to avoid the hurt of the core issue, what we do is we try to gather all the evidence on the outside that we're not what we judged ourselves to be on the inside. So if I've got a core issue of I'm not worth loving, then I have to have everybody like me. If somebody doesn't like me, I can't sleep at night. If I've got a core issue of stupid, I have to be right in all my conversations. You see that? If I've got a core issue of not good enough, I'm going to be driven to perfection. I'm trying to gather all the evidence out there to prove I'm not what I judge myself to be in here. But can I ever do it? Can I ever get enough evidence out there? I can't do it. If I've got a core issue of failure, can I ever get enough success out there to make my core issue go away? I can't, because it's not missing out there. Where's it missing? It's missing in here. It's missing in here. So that's where you've got to go to heal it. Like I said, this takes courage. But we have a courageous group here, right? Okay. Another characteristic of your core issue is that they act like sore spots. I noticed a while back that if somebody ignored me, if somebody, God forbid, hung up on me, if somebody turned around when I was talking, I noticed something come up in Randy that was akin to rage. It was like, whoa! Don't give me a brick. It was like a disproportionate reaction that would come up. But, one of the cool things about the work that you're doing is that you also get to be the observer. You get to see what you're doing. You get to catch yourself in the midst of it. And so I caught myself in the midst of it. I go, whoa, what was that? And then I had a memory. When I was a little boy, my dad and I would be talking. I'd ask him a question. When he was done, he'd just walk away. And it was like, ouch. What am I, chopped liver? Well, that's a great core issue. But can you guess what the core issue was that got created in Dad's just walking away? Yeah, thank you. Right along that line. What it was for me specifically was that I just don't matter. That I just don't matter. Then that stayed with me into adulthood. So when something happens out there that triggers that in here, wow, would all that old hurt come up? Well, how many of you believe that Spirit brings you upsets for your own healing? And how many of you believe that you get those lessons whether you like it or not? And how many of you believe that Spirit is not going to give up on you if you're not paying attention? Do you see what I'm saying? So the whole universe is designed for our evolution. And healing core issues is a big, big part of it. It's one of the most important things you can do in your lifetime. So that shares with you a little bit of the dynamics of it. Next step I want to share with you is how do you find your core issues? It's going to be different for different people, right? Okay, so how do you find your core issues? First of all, I have to tell you how not to find it. You don't find it by going up here. You don't figure out your core issues, which is where our culture goes to try to solve a problem. We go right into the mind. But you won't find it there because it doesn't live there. Where you find your core issues is in your heart. That's where you're going to find it. Your core issues have nothing to do with the truth, because no core issue is true. Where you find your core issue is by going into your heart and asking a question. And the question is, if it was true, what would hurt the most? That's how you find it. And see, like I said, this takes courage. But once you find it, that's the beginning of the end of your core issues. That's the beginning of the end of the power of core issues over you. You start to separate yourself from the core issues. It's like holding it. Here's my core issue of not worth loving. Here's my core issue of just not good enough. Whatever it is, you're holding it, you're looking at it. That's the beginning. This afternoon, I'm going to be able to walk you step by step experientially where it's going to be so crystal clear and light bulbs go off for people. It's like, no wonder. And you start to see dynamics that you never saw before. You move way up on that wisdom curve. Here's how this works in relationships, for example. You've got Bobby, you've got Susie. They come together divinely. They are madly in love with each other. Woo! You know, there's all this chemistry. Little do they know that God's got something up his sleeve there. You know, it's like they're brought together so they can resolve each other's core issues. They never say that at the altar. So Bobby's got a core issue of failure. Susie's got a core issue of not worth loving. And so what Bobby does is, because he's a workaholic, he comes home 2 hours late, doesn't call or anything. And Susie goes, hey, where were you? I said, I expected you 2 hours ago. Dinner's cold. What's going on? Well, if Bobby's got a core issue of failure, what does he hear? Yeah, I made a mistake. I messed up. All that old hurt gets triggered. And so it comes out as anger. He goes, well, look, you know, somebody's got to earn a living around here. Now, if Susie's got a core issue of not worth loving, what does she hear? Yeah, she's not worth loving. Well, you could have called. And then Bobby goes, look, why don't you just get off my back? Oh, you want me to get off your back? And it's like, boom, 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 boom. What do we call that? An argument, a fight, right? Is there any communication taking place, or is it reaction, 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 reaction? And when that happens long enough, in our society, so often what happens is people go different directions. The opportunity, the gift in it, though, is to discover their own core issues and heal them. And when they can do that as a couple, they actually grow stronger as a result of the upset. That's the direction that we want to go. So, little Jimmy goes to the county fair with his grandma. He's so excited about this. And he gets to the fair, and there's this little face painting booth. And he goes, Grandma, I really want to go to that. He goes, okay, I'll sit over here. So the little boy waits in line. There's this little girl right next to him, and she goes, you can't have your face painted. You got freckles. There's not enough room in your face to have it painted. Those freckles are ugly. And the little boy is heartbroken. He gets out of line and he goes back to his grandma and goes, Grandma, I can't have my face painted because I got freckles and they're ugly. Grandma looks at Jimmy and goes, are you nuts? Are you crazy? Freckles are the most beautiful thing in the world. What could possibly be more beautiful than freckles? And the little boy looks at Grandma and goes, wrinkles. Woo! And in that little story is the key to healing core issues. Because Grandma didn't say, well, let's get rid of the freckles. See, what we end up with in core issues, in our relationship with self, is a you gotta list. You gotta be smart, you gotta be good looking, you gotta be strong, you gotta be wealthy, you gotta have your kids acting a certain way, you gotta lose this weight, you gotta. Who's got a you gotta list? Okay? And the assumption is that when you take care of all that stuff, then you can love you. Then you'll be okay. Then life will work. Is love unconditional? True love is unconditional. If you love you under the condition of anything, is that love? That's not love. And what it takes to heal core issues, and we'll walk you through the process this afternoon. What it takes to heal core issues is not the philosophy of love, is not the understanding of love, is the experience of love. When you discover what your core issues are, what you'll notice is that you've been fighting and resisting that like crazy. And the more you fight it and resist it, the more power it's got. Well, if fighting it and resisting it is what gives it power, what's going to take its power away? Not resisting it. But you got to know that not resisting your core issue is total heresy in this culture. You see what I'm saying? Do we have any wonderful heretics here? Yeah! Woo! See, are you willing to go against what our culture teaches if it gets you what you want? Just because everybody's going a particular direction, does that make it the right direction? Who knows what lemmings are? Yeah, what are lemmings? What are they known for? Exactly. So these little furry things, apparently when they overpopulate, it's time to go jump over the cliff and drown. So imagine it's lemming day, all right? It's lemming day. Woohoo! Come on, you guys. It's lemming day. Let's go to the cliff. Come on, come on, come on. And so all the lemmings are going, come on, come on. And they're headed over the cliff. And you got to know, there's a few Jonathan Livingston lemmings who say, you go ahead, I'll catch up. Not all the lemmings go over the edge, right? Or there would be no lemmings. So just because everybody's going a particular direction doesn't make it healthy. Do you have the courage to go a different direction if that's what aligns you with Spirit? If that's what connects you with the experience of love? If that's what pulls the plug on your core issues? Can you love you with the core issue? Or do you want to spend the rest of your priceless energy trying to do what everybody else does, trying to gather all the evidence on the outside to prove that you're not what you judged yourself to be on the inside? How much of your precious life energy has been devoted to that? Funny thing, when people really heal their core issues, when they really heal it, they're not driven to do anything. They're motivated, but they're motivated from a higher place. Then they start making decisions instead of reactions. And what happens is people start to step off the pattern, the squirrel wheel of how we do what doesn't work over and over and over again. Our solution to that in the past has been to run faster, but you're never going to run faster than that wheel. What it takes to step into a different paradigm is to move up in your consciousness. Does that make sense? Who you are is sacred. Who you are is outrageously precious. Who you are pioneers. Not in a geographical realm, but in a consciousness realm. My brother shared something with me that blew me away. He does this work in Houston. He said something to me. He said, you know, Randy, the world doesn't need changing. And I looked at him and I said, are you nuts? Don't you go online? Don't you read the papers? What are you talking about? The world doesn't need changing. Brothers can talk to each other that way. And he said, no, the world doesn't need changing. I said, explain yourself. He said, if you could push a button, and in an instant of pushing that button, there was no tyranny, no crime, no greed, no children dying of preventable diseases, no starvation. If you push that button and all the atrocities were gone off the planet, and there wasn't love, in a matter of days, it would go right back to the way that it was. That what the world doesn't need, what the world needs right now isn't so much changing as it needs to learn to love. Because as we do that, starting where? As we do that, as more and more people rise in their consciousness, we will create a critical mass and we're going to see something pretty amazing. So, I want to thank you because being a renegade takes courage. For you to stand up and speak authentically, a different way of being, takes courage. For you to look inside yourself and be the best example that you can possibly be takes courage. And this is a room full of people who are passionately committed to doing that. God bless you.